really good students.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Today we're going to do a really cool lesson. But we have to remember first, remember at the beginning of the year when we had those 4-H rules we posted on the wall? Make sure you remember those rules while we're doing our lesson today. But I'm going to need some volunteers first because we're going to have these 3 really cool words that we're going to be talking about today. And I have some definitions. And the words are fungi, microorganism, and organic. So if I had some volunteers.
I'll put them up here.
Okay, y'all are going to work together and y'all are going to match the definitions
Okay.
with the words.
Where do we put it?
And this is magnetic.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, y'all go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you got
Okay, very
definitions,
small living
definitions.
thing that cannot be seen with the naked eye. Microorganism. A single-celled, multi-celled organism without chlorophyll that reproduces by spores and feeds off of organic matter and relating to living things. Is that right?
I think so. I would, because this is, I would right.
Does anyone disagree with what they have? Good job, ladies.
Oh,
You did
yeah.
perfect.
Do we get a piece of
You
candy?
get a prize. I don't do candy because we're teaching healthy lifestyles also, so you have to pick a
Let's
prize
try
out of the
forever. You know how
basket.
they take forever. I was just like, what a good. What a day's a steakhouse.
You have till 3. 1,
Okay.
2.
Now, why don't you participate?
She's videotaping. Okay. Now those stamps also go into your pencils, but we want to make sure we're not playing with those in class, okay? Thank you. Okay, so we are surrounded by microorganisms, or microbes. Some are good and some of those are bad. These tiny single-celled organisms are invisible to the naked eye. So can we just see them when we're looking around?
No.
All these microbes that are floating in the air? Okay, they are the key production to things like bread, cheese, vaccines, vitamins, and antibiotics. A vaccine? Why does that matter to us? Why do we care about vaccines?
Where we won't get sick.
Where we won't get sick. What about antibiotics?
They help us get better.
They help us get better. Very good. So those are very important things to remember. They also provide food to the nutrients to the ecological food chains. So that's really important to be outside, right? So we want them outside. Do we want them in our house? No. Well, there are a lot of different types of these microorganisms, including bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, and viruses. Do we care about viruses?
Yes.
Yes, they make us sick. Well, today we're going to talk about fungi, and there are lots of different types of fungi, but we're going to focus mainly on mold today. So we're going to look at mold. Now, I need another volunteer. All right. Now, we're going to think about, over there in that chair, when we call out a color, I want you to put it up there on that board.
Okay.
Okay? So what color do we think our molds could be?
What color?
Green.
Green. Okay, what other colors?
Black.
Black. Do we like black mold?
No.
No.
It's ugly.
What other colors? Yellow. Okay, very good. What else?
White.
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 The last 2 are really hard. We don't see them a lot.
Red.
Not red.
Orange.
No. Try another color.
Brown.
All right. And the last one is gray. Okay, when we look at mold, how does it look? Fuzzy. Very good. Fuzzy. What else?
Hairy.
Hairy. What about cottony? Is that kind of close to that? Anything else? These other 2 are kind of hard.
Leathery.
Leathery and granular. Okay, so
What does
that,
granular mean?
when we're in class, we're going to get a dictionary. Could you look that up for me? And you're going to read that out loud. Can you look it up on your phone?
Yeah, I'll look at my
I do normally have the kids, if they ask me a question like that, I don't give them the answer. I do refer them to the dictionary, and I usually bring one. So she's going to look that up. So when you find the answer, make sure you raise your hand, okay? All right. Okay. Now, we outside with this, we have organic, we used that word earlier, matter, and that's things like fallen leaves. So imagine out in the forest. if we didn't have this organic matter that decomposed, did you find it?
I did find
Okay,
it.
what does granular mean?
Granular means resembling or consisting of small grains or particles, having a rough surface or structure.
So would sand look granular?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Okay, so if we had a forest that did not decompose, if we didn't have all this organic matter and these microbes that deteriorate, then our forest might look like this. So if we could imagine going outside and having these tall trees, leaves could be all the way up to the top if they didn't decompose. Is that right? Yes. But since we have that process, these wet leaves are going to add nutrients to the soil. And what would live under a nice pile of wet leaves?
Worms.
Worms, good. So it provides homes for other animals and insects, and it's very, very important to the food chain. Do you think that Georgia is a good place for mold to grow?
Yes.
Yes. We have a lot of rain, and we're also a warm environment. But if we were in Alaska where it's really, really cold, that wouldn't be a good environment because mold likes a warm, moist place to live. Okay, we have these small, when we're outside, do you think bacteria and spores are floating all over the place?
Yes.
Yes. So we have all these little floating spores, and we can bring those in our house with our shoes. When you open the door, they can fly in, and that's what helps get this mold in our homes. But when they find that warm, moist place to live and they start collecting together, what do you think that's called? That's when we can see it on things like bread. A family's a good word, or a colony, okay? So they're going to form in this area and form that colony that we can actually see. Because the small spores we cannot see with the eye. So we'd have to look at that under a microscope. Very good. In your home, you can find this mold growing in several places. How many of you at night sneak a glass of water, milk, or soda up to your room without mom or dad knowing? Ever do that? Okay, sometimes we do that. And what if we get out of bed in the middle of the night and we knock it over? What happens? Our floor's wet. Well, if we have carpet in that room, and we have that pad underneath the carpet, and we're just like trying not to let mama know that we spilled that in our room, then you just dab it up with a towel. You didn't thoroughly get all that moisture out of the bottom of that pad. So when you were to take that carpet out years later, mold could have been growing and spreading underneath that carpet and you not know it. How would you be able to detect that mold was growing in your carpet? What do you think would happen first?
You'd smell it.
You would smell it because you're not going to see it because it's going to be underneath that floor. What about insulation? Insulation is that really itchy stuff that's inside our walls. Do you think mold could grow there? Mm-hmm. It can. It can also grow on things like wood or paper. But carpet and insulation are really good places to find it in our home. Now, all of us in our bedrooms most likely have this stuff called sheetrock. Okay? So sheetrock is what we have in here for our walls. And this is actually called kaolin on the inside, and that's grown in Sandersville, Georgia, Washington County, is where this is mined, is the largest producer here in Georgia. So this is a really good place for mold to grow. Now, it's going to happen most of the time during flooding. You'll find that on your sheetrock. So we're going to do an experiment with this in a few minutes. Is it okay for us to have mold in our house?
No.
No. Is it okay for us to have mold outside?
Yes.
Yes. Mold in your home is generally not a good thing. It can affect our health. Mold produces allergens, and you can have an allergic reaction by inhaling or even touching mold or mold spores, whether they're dead or alive. If someone is really allergic to mold, they have asthma, they have sensitive respiratory systems, then they may end up like this if you have mold in the house. Coughing, wheezing, throat irritations, their noses are stopped up, eye irritations, and you could even break out into a rash. So you have to be really, really careful if you have somebody, especially elderly, living in your home that can be exposed to this mold growth. Penicillin is one of the most common indoor molds that we have. Well, I heard penicillin was good. What does penicillin do for us sometimes? If you get a
Medicine.
Okay, it's a medicine sometimes, but in your house it's not a good thing. Okay, we said that this one mold that's called black mold is really bad. It Do y'all hear about black mold on TV?
Yes.
Yes, sometimes you'll hear about black mold on the television. I have an example of black mold. And it is sealed. But this black mold here, and you're going to have an opportunity to come look at this in a few minutes, is very, very bad for us. It can cause people to end up in the hospital and make them very, very sick. This type of mold is most likely found in a house that has been flooded. Remember I talked about the flood on the sheetrock. So if you've got the sheetrock in your house, that is a great place for mold, black mold to set up if the water has been standing there for a long period of time. If you clean it up very quickly, it's not going to be an issue. But if it's been sitting there for hours and hours, then you're going to need to make sure that's cleaned or removed in order for that black mold to not be a problem in your house. Okay, we've got a couple of experiments that we're going to do. Sorry, I forgot to show you all these pictures. These are some pictures of mold in a home. This is like a bedroom that's been flooded, and I'm going to pass them around. This is a window sill. If you leave your window up at night in the summer when it's warm outside, then this could happen if it rains and you don't, maybe you went out of town, you left the window up, forgot, something like this can happen. Okay, this one's in a basement, and this shows a log. Now, is this one okay to have it outside?
Yes.
Yes, this one is okay. We want to make sure that like dead logs outside are important to that food chain we mentioned earlier, because it's going to be the home of thousands of different little insects, and it's going to decompose, add that fertilizer to our soil, and it will, deteriorate on its own. So fallen trees are a good thing. That's interesting. All right. Now for our experiment, I'm going to need some help. We're going to have an observation log. Okay, we're going to have a couple of different things, and I want to explain this first before you start to write. I've got 3 pieces of bread, and the bread, we're going to do 3 different things with this bread. We're going to put one of them in a dark place. We're going to hang one of these in the window in the class, and this one's just going to lay on the shelf. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of water from our spray bottle on these, and we're going to have to decide which one of these is going to mold first. Okay, 1, 2, or 3. So think about that for a second. Then I'm going to have a piece of sheetrock, and we're going to pour water up into here about halfway, and you're going to let this sit in the room. And then you're going to have a piece of fresh bread inside of a sandwich bag, and you're going to have to see, which one's going to mold first. So from these 3 things, we got station 1, station 2, and station 3. So this is going to be a little bit complicated, so you have to pay attention. If you think it's going to be the sandwich bread, you would write sandwich bread in 1. If you think it's going to be sheetrock second, you can put sheetrock and fresh bread if you think that's going to be third. When we're trying to guess something like that, what is it called? A hypothesis. So yours may not be the same as your neighbor's, and that's okay because we're doing a study. We want to see what's going to happen. So take just a few minutes to sit and write which one you think is going to mold first. Okay, from the bread, we're going to write number 1 on this bag, 2 on this bag, and 3 on this bag. Now, number 1 is going to go in the window. So under the one where you put bread, put a little number 1 with a W underneath it. 1 for window. 2 is going to go in the closet, so you want to write a 2 with a C under it. And 3 is going to go on top of the file cabinet, so put a 3 with an F under it. This is where it's a little confusing. Now, out of those 3, I want you to circle the one that you feel like is going to mold first. Okay. So if I could get the 2 of you to come up, I want one of you to spray our bread, and the other one is going to, if you will, put some water inside our sheetrock. We wanna make sure we close them up really tight, because if someone has a strong allergic reaction to mold, we don't want anybody in our class sick if it's not closed tight. And our reporter is in charge of getting rid of these when it's finished, once the process is finished. Thank you very much. So over the next few days, you're gonna see that there are 7 days on your sheet. If you will go through each day, when it's in the morning when you get to school, right before you go home, or during a time that you're, not doing something else in class, go through and just take a peek at these 3, and then the sheetrock, so you can write down, how does it look? Has it got to that granular state where it's starting to deteriorate and go away? Does it have a colony formed yet, or is it still just little spores that haven't gotten together? So I want you to write down how each of these look each day and keep a log of that. I'm going to take these up for points, for Club of the Month points, at the end of the month when I come back. So make sure, even though it's gonna be a month before I see you again, put it in your 4-H folder so you can get your points for that. If your parents sign it, you'll get bonus points. Okay, so make sure you hold on to it. Now I want you to come up and look. I have some magnifying glasses up here. You can see some really cool moldy things inside our leaves. We have a small colony started on our cantaloupe. There's a big colony in the spaghetti sauce. And then you can see the black mold. So if you'll take some time to come up here and look.
Is there one certain food that molds faster?
But we used to do an orange slice too, and the orange slice is gonna go
Real fast.
faster.
You go mold, when you guys your lesson.
I do, and I had a really nice looking French bread, and then my kids decided to clean the house and they threw it away.
I mean, how should you just bring this black? I mean, what made the different color?
Well, we had nothing really, it's the
Okay.
opposite side.
Okay.
This was the rain that was coming down, and there's where it seeped through and caused the mold issue.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know there was certain
honey, I
time.
didn't break this, we just called the house for 18 minutes, and this was in the house. So, it was one of the times. Okay, out of these that you looked at, which one did you think was the coolest?
The colony.
You like
Spaghetti sauce.
Spaghetti sauce, it's got some cool stuff going on in there. There is a huge colony of mold growing. Do you see anything interesting in the leaves? You can feel how they were wet and they're starting to decompose. That's pretty cool because these here were dry. Any questions? All right, now here's my pointers. On this, that's just that spray glue. I don't know if y'all have used that before. This is just spray glue, you can do that before you get in class, and it should last the whole day. You may have to after lunch, just give it a little second spray or something, but this works great. Most of the smart boards have the magnet, and the reason I did, had some over here and me over here was just to show you the differences, spray glue or magnet, depending on what your class has. That's just a poster that I did just to kind of show what could happen if you get really sick. Those are the side effects of that. When you go into class, do not use sliced bread, especially not going to use wheat. This is not going to mold. You're going to go back in 4 to 5 weeks. It is going to look just like this. We've ran through that in the last few years. There are too many preservatives in this bread for it to mold. If you go to Walmart and get the 30% off day-old bread, or like a Sunbeam or somewhere like that that has a day-old bread, that is a better option, and it's going to mold much, much better. This isn't going to do anything.
That's very expensive.
It is good.
Was that cheap bread? I was just curious,
Well, I've tried with Colonial, I've tried several different ones. It used to mold for us, but it doesn't anymore. Just in the last few years, it stopped molding. So that brings on a whole new lesson, because the kids are like, oh my word, what happened? And I do try to take in some other things that are molded, and I try to take in things that are reality to them, like the sheetrock. This is something everybody's got in their house. The This is something that molds very easily in the bathrooms when the steam comes up from the warm showers. Bathrooms are usually the biggest place that we're gonna find mold. We also send them with a piece of paper, and I'm sorry I didn't bring them. It's the inside of a house that's kind of cut in half, and we ask them to do a mold observation, where they would go in and circle in their house where they might could find mold, and it's a really cool thing for them to go in and hunt that down.
Can
And
you
they,
just email that to us?
I can, or email me, remind me, dhold@UGA, and I'll send that to you. But this is, sheetrock is really good, especially after we had the flood in 2009. This was really good for the parents. We had a lot of reaction with parents, coming up thanking us for teaching this lesson, because the kids went home and really helped and were concerned about the mold and mold growth.
All right, which one will mold first?
It's gonna be the fresh
That's
fruit.
what I thought. That's
That's
just
what
my
it's
experience.
yeah.
It's been my experience at home.
Right, this is gonna mold first. But this ain't gonna do anything.
It's crazy.
But if it was a good, another type of bread, that would mold second,
And then sheetrock will be third. Yeah.
So,
Anything else?
It's like those McDonald's
Right.
French fries that you find in your car, like 3 years old or whatever, and they're still the
Or-
same.
There's actually a thing on McDonald's, you can Google it, and it has a hamburger specific for 7 years. And mold.
Oh, that would be cool to show the kids.
And we showed it in.
So you just Google it and
Anything else?
I want to turn against bread and.
McDonald's, that might be a good thing.
I know.
I don't like
Hi, Terry, we're
McDonald's.
done.